Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Oceana. Today I wanted to share all of my go-to Christian romance authors. So I'm going to be recommending a book along with the author, but these are authors that I will go to if I just want a nice romance. And these are all contemporary, except one is historical. I've talked about all of these authors a lot before, but I wanted one video where they all live, and I will obviously be adding to this list as I read more because there's so many good romance authors out there. I just haven't read them yet. So these are the ones that I have read. For most of them I've read more than one book or like a whole series. For a couple I've only read one book from them, but it was a 5-star, amazing, and I want to read everything that they write now, so I'm gonna be sharing them. So the first one that is pretty obvious is Becky Wade. I really enjoy her writing and her characters. She writes just really real people that have real issues, and it's not like a clean-cut, easy romance. Even though there might be like an instant connection, they always have some kind of issue internally that they're working through. Sometimes it's external as well. Usually the guy and the girl character have to like work together on something, or they butt heads about something, and it's just always a good time. My favorite book by her is My Stubborn Heart, but I would also recommend the Porter Family series because that's the book that I started with when I read Becky Wade for the first time. I read Undeniably Yours, which is the first book, and I loved it. It was really funny and cute and romantic. So in Undeniably Yours, you follow a girl who's inherited her dad or her grandpa's farm, and she is not a farm girl at all. She's kind of been estranged from him. I forget if it's her dad or her grandpa. But anyways, she wants to just sell the farm right away, but the farmhand that is there, who's been running it for a number of years, doesn't want her to sell because he loves the farm and he would lose his job if she did. And it's a thoroughbred training farm. So he wants to like show her that horses are valuable and she should keep the farm. And so it's him trying to convince her. I think she gives him 3 months to convince her to keep it, that like it would be worth her keeping it. And that is the story. And it's funny, and they do butt heads at first, but then they find each other attractive. So anyways, it's good. The faith is good, and I just really liked it. So the rest of the books in the series aren't my favorite, but it does follow this Porter family. So the guy in the story is a Porter son, and there's 3 other siblings that you end up following in other books. But I still would definitely recommend this first one. I thought it was really good. I think it's the strongest book in the series. But I've heard lots of other people like the other books too. I just didn't like them as much based on like the plot. I liked the characters, but just the plot wasn't as interesting to me. But this first one I really liked. So, okay. Yes, Becky Wade is definitely a good recommendation. Check out any book by her. I have loved basically every book by her. So the next author that I haven't read from in a while, but I read through 2 of her series and I love them. So it's Mae Warren. I discovered her a couple years ago and I read through 2 of her big family series. So the first one is the Christensen family series. This is 6 books and it follows 6 kids in this Christensen family, and they all have a romance in them. And they're just so good. I also read them completely out of order, and that's the nice thing about Mae Warren's books. I find that, yes, they will probably spoil the relationship, but you know they get together, so is it a spoiler? So I read book 2 first. I think it's called It Had to Be You. And this follows one of the sisters in the family. She is like the manager of her youngest brother, who is like a famous hockey player. So she like travels around with him, and she ends up meeting one of his teammates, and they butt heads and have to work together and take care of her little brother, and it's a funny story. But all of the books in this series are really good. I find the faith in this series really strong and solid, and then there's some really funny dialogue. Mae Warren is good at dialogue, so yeah, would definitely recommend her books too. My next go-to romance author is Ganshert. I have slowly been reading through her books and I just love the way she writes. She has such a depth to her writing and her characters that really bring the story to the next level. It's not just like a light and fluffy type of romance. It has a lot of deep like heart issues that she writes about, and it's super good. So the first book that I read from her was called Wildflowers from Winter, and this is a little duology actually. It has a sequel called Wishing on Willows, I think. So this follows a small town outside of Chicago, and this girl is living in Chicago, but she gets called in because her grandpa is on the end of his life. And so she goes back to the small town where she grew up, but she has like bad memories. She's estranged from her mom because of different church things that happened. So she doesn't really have a strong faith at that point. But she goes back to be with her grandpa, and her grandpa ends up willing his land to her. But then he wills the house on the land to his farmhand again. So again, it's a farmhand type of thing. They are struggling with like, the guy wants to keep the house, but she wants to sell the land. And he's like, but you can't sell because I am living on it. And it's their romance. And again, this one is really funny too. There's so many funny moments between them. There's like a story of reconciliation in this book as well because of the daughter and her mom, how they have had issues in the past. And there's like quite a dramatic backstory to her. And so it just had more than just a romance, like it had a lot of depth to it. So it's so good. I would definitely recommend Katie Ganshert. I've also read a couple other books by her and loved them. She's definitely one of my top Christian authors now, and her romances are just always so sweet but have a lot of like depth to them, which is nice. Okay, here's my historical recommendation. It's Julie Klassen. I have read 3 books by her and I gave 2 of them 5 stars. And there's always a romance in them, but there's also a mystery in them as well, which is fun. So these are usually set in the 1800s. They're just fun stories. Like the one I would recommend is The Silent Governess, because this is the first one that I read by her, and the mystery is really what carried it for me, but then the romance was really sweet, and so was the faith. So I really like the way that Julie Klassen writes. I think she weaves together mystery and romance really well. Okay, here's an author that I've only read 1 book from, but I loved it, and she has a new one out that I just haven't read yet, but I really plan to. So it's Nicole Deese. I read Before I Called You Mine recently and fell in love with it. Such a good writer, amazing characters. The faith was what really sold me on it. It had really good faith in it, and the relationship was really cute, and I really liked the guy. And I just thought it was really well written. I was very impressed, so I definitely want to read her next book. This follows a woman who is a grade school teacher, and she wants to adopt a child from China as a single woman, but then she ends up meeting a guy, but she already registered to adopt as a single person, so she can't easily just get into a relationship. So it's her struggle of deciding, like, do I want to prioritize this relationship or go after this child that I believe that God is placing in my home? And it's just such a beautiful story. So there's also some like family drama in there that keeps it interesting. So yeah, definitely a good one. Okay, then I would recommend Jessica Kate. She has 2 books out right now, Love and Other Mistakes and A Girl's Guide to the Outback, and both of them are so good. They're kind of companion novels. Technically, A Girl's Guide to the Outback comes after Love and Other Mistakes, but I read that one first, so it doesn't matter if you read them out of order. I actually had no idea that they were connected when I was reading them. So honestly, I would start with A Girl's Guide to the Outback because I loved it. It's so funny. Like, she writes humor really well into her stories. So in this book, this girl and guy are kind of business partners, but something happens at home that the guy is like, you know, I kind of have been not as into this business anyways, so I'm just gonna quit and go back home. And he lives in Australia, and they're in the States right now. So the girl's like, oh, okay, but their business is like, either go get him back or get him to come back to train the next guy because we need someone like him. And so she is sent off to Australia. She's like staying at his farm with him in Australia, and she's like learning all the ins and outs of surviving there, and it's really funny. She forms a relationship with his sister, which is really sweet to see, and then his sister also has a romance that you get to see as well, and it's really good. I really enjoyed it. It's funny, it's cute, the faith was awesome, and definitely recommend this author. Another one that I've only read 1 book from, but I loved it. It's Tammy L Gray. I read My Hope Next Door very recently and was blown away by the way that she included like really intense topics, but then surrounded it with faith in a way that just made sense, and it worked and gave so much hope. I loved it. This follows a girl who's returning home to help her parents. Her mom has a new medical diagnosis that is causing some issues at home, and so they ask her to come back to help. And she has a very kind of dark past in her hometown, but when she was away, she found Jesus, she accepted him into her heart, and so she's trying to live a different life. But coming back to the small town, like, she is still considered to be the person that she was before she left. And there's people from her past that like keep trying to pull her back into that old lifestyle. So then also there's a man who lives next door to her parents, who is the pastor's son of the town, and they went to high school together. And so they talk a little bit here and there, but they were never friends before, so it feels kind of weird for both of them to talk. They end up forming this bond because he had some drama with the church as well, so he hadn't been going. So they both kind of bond over like feeling weird about the church, but wanting to start going. And they both help each other like come out of each other's shells. They encourage each other. Their romance is so sweet, and just the way that he treated her was so beautiful. And I just wish that more romances were written like this, to show the guy being honorable and caring about God's intention for love. It was really, really nice to see. So I was very impressed. It was such a quick read. I was blown away. I would definitely want to read more from this author, and I would really recommend it. Okay, the last author that I would recommend has a little bit more intense content in her books, but I think almost every book has a romance in it though, so if you want something more intense but also has romance, check out Francine Rivers. So these are the two books that I would recommend. I feel like they have the strongest romance in them for what I want to talk about. So The Masterpiece is one of her more recent books. It has a romance between two characters that are definitely struggling in life. The girl ends up being the maid, like the housemaid to the guy. The guy is like a famous artist, and this is set in LA. Yeah, the guy's a famous artist, and he kind of just doesn't know what he's doing with his life. Like, he likes to create art, but he feels kind of purposeless in it, and he doesn't have any faith at the start. The girl does though, and he ends up like liking her because she's different than the kind of people that he hangs out with. But like, it's a very slow burn romance. Oh, this is such a good book. I should reread it. The girl has quite a dark past as well, so they're both dealing with their own demons from that, and the spiritual warfare in this book is really good to see. Like, it was just another aspect of faith that we don't see very often, because it's like not that fun to think about. But just the way that this guy goes through life and the stuff that happens to him, it's pretty intense. But I loved this. I just love Francine Rivers. You already know, like, she is so good at writing about God's love and grace for humanity, for like the darkest of sinners. He is there, you know, and it's just so hopeful. And I loved the way both their stories like came together, and it was like a long go though, but still very good. I really like this book. So this one is also more of a slow burn. This is set in like the late 50s, early 60s, and this girl is left on the doorstep of a pastor, and so he takes her in for a little bit. So this girl grows up feeling like she's not loved, and like she has to earn love, and she's not really worth anything, because the pastor and his family end up sending her to live with another family because they want her to have a better life, I guess. It was, you know, their choice, and stuff happens. And anyways, then it like, so that's kind of the past, and then it jumps in the future a little bit, where she's left that town and she's working in Hollywood, and she's gone through a bunch of stuff in that world, and it's not good. She doesn't have a faith in Jesus to fall back on, so she's struggling for sure. And something brings her back to the town. I don't remember what. It's a long story of how they come together, but really how she discovers God's heart for her and her value and what happened to her as a child. So yeah, very intense, very, very intense. But that's Francine Rivers for you. So would definitely recommend this book though. I mean, all of Francine Rivers' books. I haven't read one that I haven't liked, so I would definitely recommend her if you want to see a bit of romance, but then also some more intensity. So there we go. I talked a lot about those authors, those books, but I would definitely recommend all these authors. These are my go-to Christian authors. If I want to read a nice romance, I will look up a book by these authors that I haven't read and read it. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I will definitely be adding to this list as I read more authors. If you want to leave any down below, I know there's some like key ones that I haven't read yet. So if you want to leave recommendations in the comments, you totally can. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.